I'm Nancy Sheterline, and I am the Service and Community Manager here in Wales for the Audience Agency. And what that means in practice is that I've been the main point of contact for most of you who are already working with us. And generally, I try and help to let the art sector kind of be aware of the kind of free package of kind of audience development tools and data support that we at the Audience Agency offer as subsidised by the Arts Council of Wales, and help you with any kind of data queries and provide kind of free support and advice in general. I've also been in your shoes, it's worth saying. So my background is working in arts marketing and audience development, worked on a number of funding bids. So yeah, know exactly where you're coming from and can appreciate the stress that you're probably all going through right now. Yes, so that's me. Rosanna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rosanna Cant. I am also a service and community manager, but I work across the border in England. And sorry, hang on a second. Sorry, I have a annoying cough. I'll try and mute myself, not splutter across at you. Yeah, so I work across in England, but really interested in all of the work that's happening in Wales. We work quite closely as a team in the service and community manager little team that we are, and so supporting Nancy with the chat with you all today. But yeah, we're very approachable in terms of follow-up, so if you've got any questions, let us know. Nancy will be your main point of contact, but there's a whole team of us looking after audience finder users, and we're really interested in you getting the most out of what we offer at the Audience Agency, so keep in touch with us.
Brilliant, thanks. I should also just flag, not very professional, we've got a team of scaffolders working at my house today, and they've just begun work on the window that I'm sitting at. So I'll keep myself on mute when I can. But if you hear some kind of clanging, or if you see random men out my window, that's what's going on. Sorry about that. So onward with the show. Also just to say at the beginning as well, sorry, last bit of housekeeping, that all of the slides and the recording and a set of further resources as well will be circulated after this session. So if you don't feel like you've got to kind of scribble everything down, and we'll make sure that everything kind of mentioned in this slideshow as well is kind of linked in the final version that we send round, so that you can kind of access all the various places and all the places we talk about getting information from today. And with that, unless I've forgotten anything else to do with housekeeping, which I possibly have, I will hand over to Rosanna to give a bit of an intro.
Yes, so as Nancy mentioned, we're from the Audience Agency, and we do work across the UK. We enable cultural organisations to use our national data to increase their relevance, reach and resilience. If you're not familiar with us, and hopefully you've had some contact with us so far at your organisation, but if you haven't, that's who we are. We're a not-for-profit technology and research social enterprise and a UK charity. And we're all about audience-focused arts and cultural democracy in the UK and internationally as well. We have a single database of all the UK households and their cultural engagement across all art forms from over 1,200, I think that's actually more now, maybe, UK organisations, because it's growing all the time. And we've got over 10 years of turning data into intelligence and insight, helping your cultural organisations to use it. And it's worth noting, as Nancy mentioned, we all pretty much all come from industry and from where you're sitting as well in the team. So the organisation has 10 years of doing this sort of data work, but we ourselves have the experience that we bring as people into the team. So yeah, we're a friendly bunch and we know what we're talking about. That's what we kind of say at the start.
Great intro.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rosanna. So just to move on to kind of what we do in Wales specifically, given that we do kind of work UK wide and internationally. So essentially, many of you might be aware of this, but I know there's lots of newbies on the list as well today. So as an overview, essentially we've been funded by the Arts Council of Wales since 2018-19. to deliver a kind of baseline level of support to all organisations that kind of come under the cultural umbrella and who are based in Wales. So that's everyone from kind of one man and his dog working in a community centre or a rural kind of a village hall, and up to kind of the biggest organisations in Wales who we work with on quite a regular basis. And for everybody, and it also includes anyone who isn't Arts Council funded currently, and that will continue as well. So you know, regardless of whether you're funded or how you're funded or how you work, we can support you, and that's what we're funded to do, basically. And the things that we provide completely free of charge is ticketing and survey analytics via a set of tools that we call the Audience Finder data tools. More about that later. We provide access to national benchmark datasets. So as Rosanna was saying, we're essentially kind of the guardians for the UK's cultural datasets, and the kind of the big data on how people engage with culture across the UK. We provide audience spectrum segmentation, which is a kind of segmentation model that we built specifically for the arts and culture sector. And it's kind of one of the most powerful segmentation models of its kind. And you get it for free. We also get one-to-one support and advice at any point, so you can pick up the phone or drop us an email at any point. A bilingual audience survey service, so we can survey your audiences or set up a survey for you to survey your audiences, which is in Welsh and English. Also, we provide regular skill set training, events like this, webinars, and we also have monthly sessions to let you know about the kind of latest evidence on the cultural sector and how people are engaging with culture. So that might be how, you know, whatever's relevant in the moment, how the cost of living crisis is affecting audiences, or it might be looking at different art forms. Yeah, we've got all kinds of interesting sessions which you can access for free. And then we've also got an online community forum where you can chat to other users and other people using our services and compare your research or your own kind of questions, and an online knowledge base as well. So that's a kind of an alternative to kind of getting in touch with us directly. We've got a huge kind of set of articles explaining kind of how to use our services or frequently asked questions, how to get more survey responses, all of those kind of things. Which is available for all of you. And I'm not sure when this was last updated, so I don't know how thorough it actually is. But just to give you a sense, we've been working in Wales, as I say, since 2018-19, and so we're working, you know, regularly with you know, the majority of arts organisations, of the established arts organisations in Wales already. If we're not already working with you, please get in touch. Or yeah, great that you're here, really. And these are some of the people we have worked with or are working with currently, and all of those who are asterisked on that list, I think all of those are organisations who are actually contributing data on an ongoing data basis to our kind of cultural data sets. So that's where we kind of build a national data set of how people are engaging with arts and culture in Wales. It's coming from all of those organisations. I'm going to hand over back to Rosanna now, if that's all right, for the agenda for today.
Lovely, thanks Nancy. Sorry, I've got very excited that since I was last on Zoom, you can now do reactions and emojis. And so like a maniac, I've gone through and like thumbs up to everybody's messages. And I found a chilly emoji for somebody said they were cold. I hope that person gets some sunshine soon. But yeah, anyway, thank you for all your lovely weather updates and hellos in the chat. Please do keep posting and also put any questions in and we'll pick them up at the end, just a reminder. Yeah, so today's agenda, we've got a jam-packed session for you. We've got loads. I don't know if it's moved on, Nancy.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Your thing, it hasn't for me. Cool. So we're going to kick off with funding application basics, and hopefully this isn't going to be teaching anybody to suck any eggs here. This is literally just us outlining what we think would be useful to as a framework to chat to you today. And yeah, please do kind of chip in with questions as we go through that. And then we'll explain a bit about where and outline where to find the data that you need. So this will be looking at your own audience data and giving some sort of insight in how you can make that useful. The national data sets that you can access through us, and audience spectrum as a segmentation tool, which you might be already familiar with, but if you're not, we're going to go into a sort of explanation on that. We have got some follow-up resources that would be handy for you to look at with that. So if it's not everything, it's not answered everything for you, we've got resources, so don't worry. We'll go into next steps, and hopefully it'll be really applicable, instantly applicable set of stuff you can do, and then Q&A. So yeah, please do keep posting questions at the end, if not through session.
Thanks. So starting off with funding application basics. I'm sure you are well versed in all of this, and you've been doing lots of research or very experienced already in this respect. But just to kind of give an overview of what we're looking to achieve in terms of our contribution to this today. Taking the following kind of 3 objectives as your kind of funding application basics, the things you're obviously going to want to be thinking about in applying for investment review funding is what your funders' objectives are. So what are Arts Council of Wales looking for and looking to do to nurture the arts sector in Wales? How will your organisation help your funder to deliver those objectives? And how can you prove to the Arts Council that you will succeed in delivering that plan? So firstly, we know what the funders' objectives are. The Arts Council have laid out, and many of you probably took part in their consultation earlier this year, but 6 kind of overriding funding principles for this investment review, which are creativity, widening engagement, Welsh language, climate justice, nurturing talent, and transformation. I won't linger on those because there's plenty of information about them on the Arts Council of Wales's website. But next slide. Then in terms of how your organisation will help the Arts Council of Wales deliver those objectives, there'll be kind of many ways that I'm sure you're already thinking strategically about how you're going to deliver that and nurture those principles in Wales. And that might be through your artistic programme. It might be through the kinds of audiences that you're welcoming through your doors, or the audiences that you're specifically targeting, or the audiences that you already have coming to you. It might be the kinds of collaborators and associates and partners that you're working with. It might be your internal policies and processes. And it might be the kind of impact that you're looking to make in your local community. It could be on any number of things. And that's how you're trying to do that. And how can you prove that you will succeed? You want to be able to prove in your funding application that you've done your research, that you've identified the risks and opportunities, that you really kind of know what you're talking about. You want to be able to demonstrate that you've got the skills, that you've got the experience, and you've got a really good track record for what you're doing. So you're definitely going to succeed. There's no reason they should doubt your abilities. And I think, also being aware that, many organisations don't have the resources to do all of that in-house, and they might not have the experience or the skills or the track record for every element of the kind of strategic planning that they intend to deliver over the next few years. But I think, just demonstrating that you know where to outsource that work to is really useful as well. And, taking the obvious example in terms of kind of data skills, amazing if you've got an insights officer working in your organisation, but not many organisations have the resources to do that. So that's exactly why organisations like us exist. You can outsource that work, outsource that advice to us, and that's what we really want to be able to help you with. You also want to be able to demonstrate that you will be monitoring your progress, so you'll be recognising whether you're succeeding in meeting your objectives or not. And you also want to make sure that the objectives you are setting for yourself are realistic, as are your kind of projections and budgets. And the way to do that is to prove all of it with evidence. You want to make it kind of irrefutable that you'll be able to achieve the objectives that you're kind of setting out to do. And that's what hopefully we're going to show you how to find those bits of evidence to really bolster your case here. So just a few notes on kind of using data effectively. Many of you use data, I'm sure, in a day-to-day role already. But I think it can be off-putting sometimes using data because there's quite so much of it about, and it's really hard to kind of figure out what's going to be most useful. So our kind of top tips would really be to be selective in the data you're using. So making sure that the data that you've selected to use is relevant to the point you're making. Is it the best information you'd be using to make your point, or are you using it because it's what you have and you don't feel like you've actually got much data to work with and you just want to show that you're using data? You know, ideally you don't want to be in that second camp, especially when there's resources like ours that you can take advantage of to kind of find the data that you need. And also when using data in your funding applications, you ideally want to be kind of bringing together multiple data sources to create a bit of a narrative, and also find benchmark data where possible. So I think, you know, an example of that might be that you've identified by looking at your own audience data that you're really successful in attracting a particular group, a particular audience group. You might then look at a different data set, the local population data, for example, and identify that there are so many of this group living in your local area. So there is opportunity there for you to reach those people further. You might also, you know, you can kind of go anywhere with this. It might be that you also find out that the average spend for that group is so and so, and you can therefore make a projection that by increasing that audience group by 10% over the next 4 years, you can increase your income by X amount. You know, I think it's trying to pull together all of these threads based on real information and real evidence, and pulling it into a narrative that kind of makes sense and shows an outcome that you're looking to achieve. And I'm going to use a slide which I use over and over, so sorry if you've seen this before, but I just think it's a really nice little visual example of this. If we think of data as Lego, I think a lot of us are just, you know, struggle with the sheer amount of it that we have access to. And essentially what we're trying to do is sort that information out. And that's something that we can help you with. You can arrange it, you know, figure out what's most useful, and prioritize what you want to use where. And then what we're really talking about is reaching that end goal of kind of explaining it within a narrative as part of your funding application. That's the kind of goal of using your data in a really effective way. So I'm going to hand over back to Rosanna to talk about where to begin to find some of this data.
Yeah, cool. So you might feel as if you've got a big pile of bricks at the minute, or you might not even know where your bricks are, just to extend that Lego metaphor. So here's where your bricks are, and we're going to talk about how to sort it into a lovely house or pirate ship or whatever you want to do with those bricks. So starting off first with your audiences. So what we've got across here is a mix of where we can help and where you might just have that data yourself. So your audience data, you may have a ticketing system. So either it's your own or it's another organisation if you're a touring organisation, but you have some ticketing system data, which can give you a data source. You may have survey data, or maybe looking to get some survey data. You might have just a horrible, great big spreadsheet of postcode data. You haven't maybe got it into a sort of system where you're collecting surveys or ticketing data. You might just have postcodes in Excel files. And you may have manual records of bookings and not formal ticketing system. But that is a kind of list of data sources from the perspective of your audiences. Now, the national data set, the options are census data, which we support with, audience finder survey data set, which is where we can provide that national picture of the survey data set that we hold. The Audience Finder ticketing data set, so again, this is an aggregated national perspective. We also have a national piece of research that we have, UK population, this is, I should say, piece of research called the Cultural Participation Monitor. And I would advise, if you haven't taken a look at that yet, on our evidence hub, please do take a look. It's really good stuff. So that's a really clear, nice piece of national data set that you can pull in. And there's Experian consumer data, which we pull in and work with on your behalf if you work with us and have products. So the national perspective comes through there. And then Audience Spectrum is also in your toolkit for data sources. So this is a population segmentation of all UK households based on cultural engagement. And it's developed from all the data sources previously mentioned and more. So it's a really comprehensive way of slicing up data and using data sources. So we'll talk a bit about each of these now. Following slides. So your audiences, so where to find the answers. So your ticketing system reports will provide a perspective on your own ticketing data. So, which you'll know this, if you're using any of these systems, you'll be very familiar with the reports from Spectrix or Ticketable or Ticketsource, even if you're using that. And apart from the cost of running a ticketing system, obviously, if there are costs, that's a free piece of ticketing analysis. To get the perspective and the context of aggregate and benchmarking and all the other bits and bobs we have, you can look at your audience data through the TAA Audience Finder data tools. So this offers, so our platform offers free benchmarking, free look at your data in the context. So for surveys, this is an Audience Finder survey. For ticketing, we offer ticketing analysis with benchmarks and context around that. So the difference being, in your own ticketing system, you're obviously just looking at your own ticketing. When you pull it into a TAA data tool platform, you're looking at it in context and you've got benchmarks. We can also help you with answers if you're looking at postcode data only. So this is a scenario where we haven't done a survey, or we don't have a ticketing system, but we've got a list of postcodes. We can provide support with getting you postcode data support analysis at a low cost. And then if you are interested, we do full range of bespoke reporting, and this ranges from low to high cost options. Using any data that you have, we can provide a solution for you, and it's a really flexible way we work, so we can answer any questions you have, slicing up your data any which way, really. I don't think there's any query that we've gone, no, that doesn't make any sense, we can't do that. We will always seek a solution for you. So yeah, what do we mean by the Audience Finder data tools? There's a whole suite of things that we offer, very excitingly. So if you're not familiar with these, we'll just quickly run through them. Excuse me. It's fair to say that there's a process of consolidation happening, and there's some changes coming down the line for Audience Finder, and this will become a little bit more streamlined. But at the minute, we have got Audience Finder Original, which is, as the name suggests, our original platform, where you can get all of the original bits and bobs that we've been running for a decade. So ticketing data analysis, this is pulling in your own system data against the aggregate, the national perspective, and regional perspectives in some cases too. Survey data analysis, and then national, like you say, benchmarking is possible in there. Show stats. So this is where, if you are a touring organisation, you'll possibly be familiar with show stats, and this is ticketing data is available by performance. So this is a hub really of sharing across from host venues and touring venues to get perspective on a performance by performance basis of audience data from a ticketing perspective. And then over on Audience Finder Answers, this is our developing platform that will eventually become the one platform to rule them all, where everything will, so supersede all of the platforms later in 2023. That's a more professional way of saying it. And it's combining at the minute, and it's still in development, continue to be developed as we go along, sort of as a fresh platform based on user feedback mainly. It's combining the most useful functionality of Audience Finder Original and Show Stats, and it's got additional insight in there, including Welsh specific insight. So that's important for you guys to know. And there'll be a real focus. There is a real focus on that platform because it's live now. You can go and have a look at it, on the application of data and the findings that are in there. It's got a really nice control center. It's for surveys and for ticketing data, so you can, it's really, the data's at your fingertips and you're in a sort of control of that data and how you manipulate it and look at it. And then parallel to all of our data tools, we've got our brilliant support that is available to anybody to access. So we've got an online knowledge base. So this is a DIY bit if you just want to look up an answer that you think. We've got hundreds of FAQs on there, keyword searches, so it's nice and easy to use. We've got help desk as well, so if actually you're not finding what you need on there, you can get advice and support 10 AM to 6 PM, and there's an email address if you'd prefer not to call. And Nancy is your person in your area, your key contact from the team, so please get in touch with Nancy if there's anything that you would like to chat about. That's been a whistle-stop tour, so if anybody would like any sort of more specific one-to-one kind of chat about those tools, Nancy, fair to say you're up for that chat, aren't you?
Yeah, I can do. I regularly kind of program in kind of full demos, so I can book in a half-hour session, screen share, and take you through the dashboards for each of those. But yeah, they're all kind of free to access. You can access them via those links there. And I think the next part will be Rosanna showing you exactly what you'll get by accessing them as well.
Yeah. So more detail is coming in this, but yeah, if this isn't enough for you, have a session, have a chat with Nancy. Just a show of thumbs, if that's a possible thing, or react in some way with the reaction button if you are a current Audience Finder Original or Answers user. Just a really quick poll if you're already accessing any of these, just give a little reaction. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up. Yeah, okay, lovely. Got some users. Great, that's fine. Just, yeah, wanted to have an idea of that. Lovely, thank you. So yeah, ticketing insights. So in Audience Finder Original, what can you expect? So really briefly here, we've got headline sales figures, you've got customer profiles, you've got the ability to look at ticket price and spend, booking frequency, booking day, advanced booking, the things that you would expect that you get out of your box office system. However, all of these, include party size, art form crossover, location, etc., it's all benchmarkable against against the aggregates that are in there. So it's really handy to be able to look at all bookers and then your bookers for these instances, as the example is in the image there for location. So that's where you're looking at where your audiences are coming from, and you get a nice snapshot of all bookers versus your bookers, so you can toggle between the two, which is handy. So each insight has the ability to benchmark, which is really handy. And then moving on to the next slide. Also in Original, we have the survey insights that's broken down literally by the aspects of the survey itself, and you can just look at each of these insights inside Original and sort of we sort of refer to it as more of our DIY platform, where you build the insights that you want to look at yourself. So you scoot around the platform, taking a look at the motivations, transport mode, if you would like to look at the Welsh language ability question, etc., you can find out that information and piece it together yourself across the site. It's really handy to be able to look at this if you're doing both. So if you're doing ticketing data and survey insights, it's really handy. In Original, you can look at this manually toggling between what your ticketing data is telling you and then your survey insight, and that bit more depth behind not just the booker then, but you're getting obviously detail on any audience member that's been surveyed. So obviously with ticketing data, you're only looking at that instance with the booker, but survey data has got that bit more context as well. So that's.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here as well,
Yeah.
just because I'm aware there are a couple of newbies, and apologies for those who aren't new, and I've heard me say this before. In terms of what we're talking about in terms of a survey here, it's the way that this tool kind of works is that you have to be using a specific kind of survey template that we provide you with. So I've put some information in the corner of this slide about where you can set up one of those. You put a request through. We can add your own additional questions to it as well, so it doesn't have to be kind of as very very strictly based on the questions that we have in the core template. You can ask things that are specific to your organisation as well. And once you've got one of those set up, those responses from an e-survey or a tablet survey, however you want it set up, will kind of automatically feed through into this platform, into Audience Finder Original. So unfortunately, it's not a platform for kind of feeding through survey responses of a survey that you've kind of created in-house with your own kind of bespoke questions. But we can do pretty well in terms of keeping it really flexible so that you're getting the answers that you want.
Yeah, sorry about that, Nancy. I dutifully asked, who's using, and found out, there are some current users and not everybody, and then just went on to assume, just gallivanted ahead there and assumed that you all know what I'm talking about. So yeah, of course, the survey is a like Nancy said, there's a core survey that should need to be followed if you wish to gain this insight, because that's how we do the benchmarking, that's how we give you the insight. But like Nancy mentioned, it's very flexible. It's got a very user-friendly process for setup as well. So there's like nice options for additional questions, and you've always got the option for bespoke questions too. So yeah, apologies if I am gallivanting ahead and anybody's got any questions or want me to slow down then on this bit, because I shouldn't assume people know what I'm talking about. I think we're ready for the next slide, Nancy.
Is it happy? Cool. Yes, I
cool.
will move ahead. There we go.
No, sorry, I was doing that governmental COVID thing of next slide, please. Oh, horrible. Sorry. Show stats. Okay, cool. So show stats is sort of slightly different in that it presents the insights in a different way, because it's different insights. It's normally speaking touring organisations looking to gain insight from show stats, but not exclusively. Sometimes organisations are interested in their data by performance. Say a run of a particular performance might be looked at in show stats, or there's there's interest of an organisation not touring and looking at it. But really, you're accessing the analysis of audience data from performances from your tour venue, the venue that's got the ticketing data and their system, and it pulls through. So as you can see there, the report it gives you really all the stuff that you would need to fulfill when you're looking at marketing campaigns and audience development, but it gives you an idea of it by performance instead of as a whole. So yeah, that example report, if anybody's interested, we can send over a show stats example PDF report so you can see what it looks like. But yeah, that's kind of how it works in show stats. And Audience Finder answers. So where Audience Finder Original was quite a DIY in the sense that you were thinking of what you would like to find out and then hunting for the metrics, and it's user friendly, but it does rely on you thinking about what questions you want to be asking. The idea behind Audience Finder Answers is it's a more Q&A style, insights style site. So there in the example we've got, what is the reach into areas of deprivation in Wales? And then it gives you the answer. The question is there and the answer is there. So we're looking at this example organisation, and we can see that it's telling us your results show that within your catchment area, 84.3% of your bookers live in areas that have been ranked as being in the more deprived half of all areas in Wales. So this is really good, actually, insight, specific insight for Wales, that the indices of multiple deprivation analysis is in there, and it's broken down by electoral ward and local authority. if I'm misspeaking on any of this, Nancy, just chip in, because that's my understanding, but you're hot off the press with any Welsh updates to answers. So yeah, just interrupt me if I'm talking nonsense. That's my understanding.
Yeah, all right so far, yeah.
Brilliant, okay, cool. So yeah, you're able to get an overview report. So you can have a look at your ticketing insight in terms of total tickets, income and revenue, and postcodes, for example, just to get those headlines as well in a nice, handy sort of way, instead of having to go through the entire site and build that yourself. There's also some very user-friendly little owls across the site that tell you how you can make use of the insight. So the idea behind Answers is that really it's giving you as much of that practical advice alongside the data, sort of replacing us, would be us in a one-to-one session, these little owls. So yeah, if you do want to log on, and if you haven't already had a look at Answers, if you're used to Original, but you'd like to have a look at Answers, there's a very straightforward way of logging on to Answers to find out. So if you've already got an audience finder Original login, you just need your email address that you use for that login, and it will take you through to Answers using a magic link. Owls and magic links, it's making it sound quite Disney and fun, and it is, because data is fun. So yeah, audience finder Answers survey. Again, we've got lots of really funky new features on Answers that aren't on Original. So again, if you know and love Original, you'll love this even more, because we've got things like a deep dive on the qualitative data back from surveys. So we got some feedback that would be really handy to see in dashboard. And so actually there's a bot online that uses that kind of goes through and allocates whether it's positive, mixed, neutral or negative. And so you can actually have a look at your feedback already sorted into those sections, which is really, really helpful. You do have to just double check, because it is a bot doing this, that they've actually allocated this correctly, but most of the time they get it right, and that's a really handy thing. But you get to look at, yeah, so sentiment analysis particularly is really handy, but you also get a look at demographics, postcodes, ethnicity, all of the things that you would need to be looking at in terms of survey insight is kind of available. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, and just to reiterate, so you can literally, I mean, my advice would be literally set up a free survey immediately after this session if you haven't already, because it's free and it's dead easy and we'll do the work. You just have to send us an email telling us what you want, and then you'll be able to access all of the data in all of the ways that we're showing for free, and feed that into your funding application. So it's a great kind of source of data and insight. Sorry, Rosanna, interrupting.
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, I was done then. No, sorry. So bespoke reports. So as you've seen, there's tons that the platform is available for you, plugged in with your own data for free. We also have the ability to work in a completely bespoke way with you, should you wish to do that. And one of the ways is doing sort of bespoke reporting. But we also have some free analysis available that's the national analysis. So do take a look at, like, we've already mentioned the CPM, the Evidence Hub and stuff that's available on our website as well, to get a flavour of our reporting style and things that you might be interested in. But yeah, bespoke reports. So we can do pretty much, you could come to us with anything, and you can pose a question, and we can see how the data you have, the data we have, could sort of help answer that. And one of the ways that we often get asked to do that is through trend analysis. So this is how metrics are changing over time for an individual organisation. Quite often this can be ticketing data over time, but can also be survey responses. Penetration analysis, so this is how well am I reaching my existing arts audiences in the area, and where are my areas of opportunity and growth, so cold spots, but also where I've got some coverage but I'm not quite getting the potential of an area. And then cross-tabbing of metrics, so what marketing platforms are non-white audiences best responding to, and what quality ratings are young people giving us are two examples of cross-tabbing that we've been asked for. And it's quite interesting. You know, we like being given cross-tab questions because we love getting into the detail of this and helping organisations solve some of these kind of bringing together of their data. So please challenge us and bring your questions to us if you're interested in anything. And also I would say, if you're interested in collectively looking at data as well, we have some bespoke reports we do for groups of organisations. So yeah, if there's a particular query from a group perspective, let us know. But yeah, we provide in our bespoke reports, the data is displayed in lots of lovely different ways, and you can talk to us about what would work best for you as an organisation, but we can provide it in data tables, mapping, graphs. And this is normally, just to say, it's charged by our day rate. So it's literally just how long will this piece of work take us? Our day rates are X, Y, and Z, and we will just be very upfront about all of that straight away in the chat with you. And yeah, quotes are free, provided free of charge, no obligation.
Already as well, since January, we've been really busy with kind of odd little bits of work in this respect from organisations in Wales who do just have a clear idea of the specific question they want answered, and sometimes it's, you know, half a day's work, and it's really easy for us to pull together a quick report. Sometimes it's something a little bit bigger, but do get in touch, and at least then you know whether the question can be answered and what you might need to budget in going forward if you did want to answer it thoroughly. Sorry, Rosanna, I keep jumping in.
No, please, no,
Okay.
please do. Yeah, I go off on tangents and don't always cover everything. So if something's not clear as well from anyone's perspective, let's know. Cool.
Sorry, I've jumped ahead now to the next section, if that's all right. So yeah, thanks Rosanna for going through all of the kind of places you can find information on your own audiences. That's kind of one piece of the jigsaw puzzle. The next piece, you know, in talking in terms of kind of pulling together different data sets, having access to national data sets is really key as well, because that's where all of the context comes from. It's all very well saying you've attracted X number of this type of person, but if you don't know whether that's unusually high or unusually low or about right, you've got no way of knowing really whether, you know, how well your organization is actually performing in that regard. So that's what the national data sets help us to do. And again, as you saw from those slides that Rosanna presented, within the audience finder data tools themselves, within audience finder answers, within show stats and original, there is kind of benchmark ticketing data and benchmark survey data built into those tools. So all of your insights are shown against a benchmark. And also that benchmark can be population data as well. So if you want to compare the number of people of a certain age with the number of people in the population of that same age, you can do so and look at those quantities and distribution. But there are a few other places as well where you can either access really useful free national data and interpretation of that national data, more importantly, and also some other options for kind of low cost or high cost if you have very you know, bespoke questions again. We can kind of do it all. So just to run through a few of these then in turn. Won't go through the data sets again, the tools again, because we've kind of covered that. But firstly, looking at the evidence hub. So let me just go back. So this is essentially, I should have said, this is the second bullet point, and what we're talking about here is the audience agency website, really. So on the audience agency website, there is a section called the evidence hub. And within that section of our website, we publish public access research about cultural engagement across the UK. And there is a section where it's kind of broken down by nation. So you can have a look at all of the articles relating to data in Wales specifically. And there's also a section which is looking specifically at data from our cultural participation monitor. That was the piece of research that Rosanna mentioned earlier. It's essentially a population survey. So we take a representative sample of the UK population, including a good representative sample in Wales. And each month we ask a new set of questions, or sometimes we ask some of the same questions so we can measure a trend. We actually started out doing it during when kind of the COVID broke out, because we wanted to understand changing attitudes and really measure those trends, see where people were beginning to feel more comfortable about going out, see where people's attitudes towards face masks and social distancing were beginning to change and shift, and just be able to kind of project a little bit the turning of the tide, if anyone can do that. It was, you know, tricky task to try and do, but yeah, it gave us some really useful kind of longitudinal data to do that. And it was so useful, in fact, that even though those are not things that we're necessarily looking to measure anymore, we've continued that piece of research. So we've continued surveying that section of the population on an ongoing basis every few months, to ask them about other things that are really relevant in terms of impacting the arts and culture sector. So primarily things like the cost of living crisis. We've had some really interesting answers there. And you know, we've asked some Wales specific stuff as well. We've asked about Welsh language attendance, all kinds of things. And every time we get our findings back, we scribble down some, I say scribble down, it's probably more intensive than that. It's not me doing it. But, we pull together some lovely articles of our findings, and those are all available for you to look at. So do have a browse. And then what we also do is, I think I mentioned this earlier, but we also present those findings in our monthly evidence sessions, which we call our tea breaks. So they're a 45-minute concise session designed to happen during one of your tea breaks or over your lunch break. And the T stands for Talking Evidence and Audiences. I'm impressed with our marketing department for that one. I think it's a good one. So I'll show you some of those evidence articles as an example in a moment. We've also got the oh, do you know what? I'll come to that when I come to that. I'll show you some of those evidence articles to start with. So here's a really interesting one. So this is some analysis we did on, you know, we can work with all data sets as well. We did some analysis on the Hint cardholder dataset. I think most of you will be familiar with the Hint scheme, but for those of you who aren't, it's the kind of national access scheme in Wales to arts and culture. I think particularly performance-based venues, whereby a cardholder can get discounted tickets for themselves or a carer, or free tickets for themselves or a carer rather. So we took the database of cardholders. I remember it was a huge number of people actually. And we did some analysis. It was an anonymized database, so we could kind of work with it in a few different interesting ways. But we did some geographical analysis based on the different access needs that were stated in their application for their Hint card, which gave us some really interesting findings actually. So we produced a series of maps, which again you can access on our website. You'll get the links in the slideshow when that's sent round. But we've got maps which will hopefully assist organisations in kind of understanding which access requirements are most prevalent in their area. And those are broken down into accessible parking facilities, audiences who require wheelchair access, and audiences from the deaf community or who are hearing impaired as well. So we've got all of that available for you to browse through and come to your own conclusions. As I said, we also did some interesting analysis on Welsh language event attendance. So just to differentiate between two things, because there's kind of two elements of Welsh language that we measure in what we do. There's a question in our kind of core survey that we were talking about earlier, which measures the Welsh language proficiency of the audience member. So that's one thing that we have a lovely data set on and we can understand. But we also, this was part of the cultural participation monitor. So this is slightly different. It wasn't just surveying existing audience members and people we know who are into arts and culture. This was actually surveying a representative sample of the Welsh population. of the population in Wales. So there will be people in this group who don't even attend arts and culture or don't consider themselves, you know, artsy people in any way, which is why I think these findings are really interesting, actually. So we asked a series of questions that you can see on the right about attendance to arts and cultural events that were performed in Welsh. So whether that's a Welsh language gig, whether that's a Welsh language theatre production, I was going to say Welsh language dance, can't dance in Welsh, but you get the drift. And we did some analysis on those findings, and we published a little article about that on our evidence hub that you can access. These are some of the kind of key findings from it. But essentially that Welsh, oops, gone, sorry. Every time I press a button. Welsh language attendance is a kind of minority activity within Wales, but it's still undertaken by about 1 in 6 people, which actually I thought was quite a high number, regardless. And although only 18% of the population say that they understand Welsh at all, 58% nonetheless were interested in attending arts and cultural event performed in Welsh in the future. So I think the real kind of outcome headline finding from this piece of research was that those of us who work in organisations presenting Welsh language work really need to be thinking beyond Welsh speaking audiences in terms of the kind of target audience for that work, because there are so many people out there who are interested in attending regardless. So it's really thinking about making those pieces accessible, and I think that can be a trap that we all fall into, really, in kind of you know, sidelining that audience as having particular characteristics. Also, a whopping 74% of people who speak no Welsh at all had said that they were quite interested in attending arts and cultural events in Welsh in future. So there's a huge potential here, I think, that I'm sure some organisations are tapping really well, but others might just not be aware of. It might not have occurred to them that actually this is the attitude of a lot of people in Wales. Yeah, pieces of research like this I think are really interesting. So another example of article from our evidence hub is our cost of living analysis. So again, this was done through our cultural participation monitor, and I'll just share some of it with you now, because again, very interesting, very relevant to funding applications and understanding your audiences, I think. But there's loads more about this on the website, so please, this is just skimming the surface. So again, we asked a number of questions to the UK-wide representative population about how cost of living crisis was affecting them, and where they planned on reducing spending, and kind of the areas in their lives that they thought would be most impacted. And what we found out was that it was affecting pretty much everybody. There are very few people who feel like they're going to be, you know, have been unaffected. And we also were able to then look at the people who had responded and kind of look at the answers that they had provided to each of those questions, and sift through that data to kind of create 6 different groups of people who all shared similar characteristics in how they were responding to the cost of living crisis. So segmenting the population really into kind of these six types, which we named A to F. With kind of A on one end of the spectrum, who these are the people who are not really looking to cut down very much, who are, you know, perhaps quite comfortable. To group F, who were, you know, feel like their lives are going to be substantially impacted, and you know, they're having to change a lot about the way that they live in recent months. And we've identified what characteristics kind of bond these groups together within each of these groups. So, you know, those group A tend to be either very young or much older, tend to be leaning towards urban living. And we also did a bit of interest analysis as well, so we could understand actually what were their interests, which might give us a little bit of indication of the kinds of events that they attend, and help us to understand what the actual impact on our audiences are likely to be from the cost of living impact. So in particular, I mean, I think there are groups who are looking to kind of down a little bit everywhere, and interestingly, those groups, that group and Group B, tend to be particularly interested in history and heritage. So, you know, if you work in a museum or a heritage site, that might be a group who you're kind of wanting to think about a little bit more. We've also translated this through our segmentation. You'll see all these funny names at the top if you're not familiar with our audience spectrum already, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So that's a kind of useful way of viewing it through that lens as well. And the other kind of one to point out is Group D, I think, who are kind of more affected than average. You know, they're past the middle point, and the areas that they've said they're most looking to cut down on are leisure and going out. So that's a group that's going to be affected, and that is affected at the moment. So it might help, looking at your audiences, it might help you kind of understand actually where attendance patterns have changed. If you can fit some of their characteristics to this group, it's, you know, provides that evidence that actually it's normal and it's happening UK wide, and it's what the data is telling us, is that this group is particularly hard to engage with at the moment. So, you know, there's a wider pattern there. I won't go through all of this. There's actually a recording of a really good session that our head of evidence did a few months ago on our website. So if this is interesting for you, I highly recommend watching that. Another really useful resource, I think we don't talk about enough at the Audience Agency actually, but it's been quietly running in the background and available to access on our website since 2020. So this is a kind of live BI dashboard looking at the UK-wide income from arts and culture on a week-by-week basis, and it's essentially, we started it in 2020 to begin to measure the impact of COVID on arts income. You can play around with it, it's interactive, and it's been running. We also uploaded historical data so that you can compare your kind of pre-COVID benchmarks or pre-COVID week-by-week income to you know, current times, and see where there has been impact, how far along we are in terms of recovery. And you can also, there are several pages which look at slightly different things on this dashboard, so do have a play around, but on one of the pages you can isolate Wales data specifically. So that's the screenshot that I've put here, and you can see I've selected to show the 2017 to 19 average, so the kind of average pre-pandemic income per week compared to 2022 income per week, and you can see where actually there are areas, times during the year where there has been you know, showing a really big recovery. I should say this isn't adjusted for inflation, so that's a consideration as well, but it gives you a sense of you know, the changes over time, and a really good one to explore, particularly if you do work that's seasonal. I think if you know, mainly focus on doing work that's outdoors during the summer holidays, you can kind of have a look at those months and see how they compare, you know, across the years, and see perhaps, you know, be able to make some projections going forward around where your income might sit. Okay, so those were some examples from that list of kind of free population data sets that I was showing you. We're now moving into the area of kind of those kind of lower cost data sets that you can access. And this is something I just wanted to flag with everybody, particularly for those of you already using the Audience Finder data tools, actually, and for people who kind of you know, use that to the you know, to the extent that they can, but are still looking for more data. we've been doing a load of research kind of with our existing users lately, and this has been voted as one of the kind of most useful tools that the audience agency provide. So it's a really useful tool. And essentially, this is a kind of off-the-shelf report that we can create for you. Look with a kind of in-depth cultural and demographic analysis of your local population, and you define what that population area is. So it might be that you consider your local audience as being within a 20-minute drive time of the postcode of where you're based. You might just be wanting to look at people within a specific city, you know, within Cardiff or within Swansea. You might be looking to look at a really hyper local community, you know, everybody who is literally kind of walking distance to where you're based, and understand who those people are a little bit better. And that's what these reports allow you to do. And we show you, this is essentially using census data, but also some of that kind of Experian data and TGI media data as well, relating to kind of newspaper readership. It's got all kinds of things, and cultural attendance, all kinds of things are in this report. There's a full example of a full report on our website that you can download and have a look at everything that's included. I've just pulled out some screenshots from some of the pages. I think it's about 10 pages long in total, the full report. I don't know, something like that. But it covers things like arts and cultural attendance. So you can see in that kind of back screenshot that it's showing that 24% of the population in Cardiff have visited an art gallery in the last year, according to the datasets we use, and 1% of the population of Cardiff have actually visited an arts gallery once a month. So you know, could be considered regular attendance. Again, age, you can see an age breakdown for that population. So you can see that there are high numbers of younger people living in Cardiff. The other thing is, again, just talking about context being key to everything. All of the, as well as choosing your kind of what we call the target area, which is the area you want to know about the population of, you can also choose a base area of your choice for context. So this example has Cardiff as the target area and Wales as that base area. And what essentially it's showing you here is that compared to the rest of Wales, Cardiff has a particularly young population. Compared to the rest of Wales, Cardiff has a particularly culturally engaged population, as one might expect. But all kinds of things, and you know, it's really, really interesting reading for your local population, depending on where you live in Wales. And there are several versions of this area profile reports at kind of incrementally increasing costs, depending what you want. Another version of this, which is called an area profile report plus, actually gives you an Excel document attached to your report, giving you a breakdown of all of these metrics by postal sector. So you might have, you know, 100 postal sectors in the area that you want to look at, and the report will actually drill down and give you information at that really granular level, so you can really figure out exactly where your target audiences might be living, where the younger people are living, where the more culturally engaged people are living, where people of you know, different ethnicities, or people, you know, any kind of factor that you want to kind of look at. And is included in the report, is given at a kind of postal sector level with the APR plus, so that's a really good one. Right, unless you've got anything else to say about APRs, Rosanna, have I missed anything on those?
No, I don't think so. I think they're really popular reports that a lot of people use as their evidence base for either starting a project or funding applications, or just kind of thinking about where to start if you've not necessarily got your own data as well. It's a really handy starting point. So chat to us about that if that applies to you, because yeah, lots of organisations have given great feedback on them for that reason.
Do you know, I just thought of something actually, sorry. It took the mic
Go
away.
for it.
One thing I was just going to say as well, because the last thing on that list was, again, bespoke reporting. Just to flag, I know Rosanna spoke about bespoke reporting before, so we hadn't put together another slide for it, but you know, we quite often get requests for bespoke reporting which are entirely centered around national data sets, and you know, people who don't want to know anything about their own audiences, who just want to understand the sector they work in a bit better. And we've actually had a few of these from Wales, you know, in the last few weeks, people trying to understand about a particular you know, and it might be, for example, you want to understand more about outdoor arts organisations in Wales, and we can pull together, you know, we quote you a cost for telling you about all the different motivations about outdoor arts tenders, all of the different, you know, geographical mapping of outdoor arts tenders. So, you know, anything is possible in terms of bespoke reporting, just to kind of get that across. And although it is costed, the thing I would always kind of sneakily advise is that if you can find other organisations who want to know the same answers that you do, you can always co-commission work, you know, split the price of something. So we get a lot of organisations doing that. You know, if you work in dance, for example, and you want to know more about dance audiences in Wales in the last year, or recovery of dance organisations since COVID, you know, pre-COVID versus 2022 audiences, you know, it might be that we could, you know, if you could gather together with other dance organisations and split the cost, you could get yourself some really interesting research at quite low cost by doing it that way. I will shut up now and let you go on, Rosanna, because we have much to get through. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think we're kind of jointly chatting about audience spectrum, aren't we? So yeah, in this bit as well, if you are a seasoned pro at audience spectrum and you know all about this and you want to share a jolly experience of using audience spectrum, pop it in the chat or interrupt us here if you want to say something about it. But basically, if you're not familiar with Spectrum, it's our population segmentation tool that uses all UK household data, and it's based on cultural engagement. So you might be familiar with using, if you're a marketing professional, certainly you might be familiar with using other segmentation tools that are available, but they are much more based on consumer and demographic profiles that are you know, more on consumer brands and lifestyles, not necessarily specific to the cultural sector. So this is the difference with audience spectrum. It's specific to cultural engagement and likelihood to engage, and it's the most powerful and widely used segmentation tool for the cultural sector. We can categorically say that. So yeah, using it will guarantee that it's been tried and tested and invested in for a long time and used by a lot of arts organisations. It's developed using real data, and it combines multiple data sources, so it's a very robust method for slicing up your data. And the idea behind it was to establish a sort of shared language for the UK cultural sector. And I think that we have been able to do that, at least in part, and it's continuing to be used and to be grown by us as a tool. So we've got, on that point, 10 segments, and for years there have just been the 10 segments, but actually we just have launched last year, I think, was it, 20 sub-segments. So each segment has now a sub-segment, or the 10 are split out into 20. That makes more sense. So I don't know whether is there any more on that? Yes, there is. Good, cool. Interrupt Nancy if you want to say anything specific on these at all, but just in a nutshell, our most engaged top of the spectrum, if you like, are these three. So you've got metroculturals, commuter land culture buffs, and experience seekers. And then each of them have got a sub-segment that each are split now, as each of the segments are. But ostensibly, your most engaged segments at the top of the spectrum are split out across metroculturals that tend to be either older and established high-spending professional elites, or the younger version of that is the younger, mobile, and emerging metropolitan professionals. So actually, the detail behind the sub-segment is really important, because there's quite a difference in the way that you would approach that segment. And previously it was all just, we're a metrocultural, and that was the entire label. So now the differential between those is quite key. And then the others, so commuter land, culture buffs. So each of these segments have got, and subsegments has got this detail behind it on the label, so that you can understand a bit more about them. And I would say take a look, if you're not familiar with these names and with the detail behind it, at our website, and it's available on the dashboard, how to engage with, and a bit more detail behind each of the segments, what to do with them. But yeah, commuter land, culture buffs are prosperous families living in the commuter belt of major urban centres, or they can be wealthy empty nesters with comfortable lifestyles in more rural areas. And for experience seekers, they're either socially minded midlife professionals with varied artistic tastes, or they could be students and graduates with adventurous attitudes in diverse urban areas. So yeah, your data would be able to be split and profiled by each of these types of segments. And those three are the top ones. Moving on then, on middle of the spectrum, we've got dormitory dependables, trips and treats, and home and heritage. So with dormitory dependables, we're looking at commuter town families investing for the future, or settled, comfortable residents enjoying regional life. With trips and treats, we're looking at modern young families or settled families with an established lifestyle. Home and heritage, settled suburban seniors or affluent residents of rural idyls. So you get the picture. Each of these have got lots of detail behind them, but hopefully you're starting to picture how your data would probably be profiled by these. We come on then to the least engaged segments, and this is quite often where funders are most interested in you proving that you will do, demonstrating what you will do to reach these. They are typically underserved by cultural offer, and that's why they're not engaged, or maybe there are other factors such as deprivation can come into it, but not exclusively. So there's helpful info on each of these segments and how to reach as well, so bear that in mind. We've got up our street, frontline families, kaleidoscope creativity, and supported communities. And so again, you've either got middle-aged inhabitants of semis for up our street, or older residents of terraces and flats and built-up areas. You've got frontline families, which are older families getting by and despite challenges, or they could be younger and cash-strapped families and couples starting out. Kaleidoscope creativity, settled and diverse, or hard-pressed singles. And supported communities, they're young, immobile, hard up, often relying on welfare to get by, or elderly residents of sheltered housing with low income and declining health. So our least engaged segment profiles look like that, and the detail behind each of those is really good and really key to look at. So please do take a look at that in understanding.
Yeah, these are really key groups in terms of that widening engagement investment principle, I think. And if you have a look, there's detail on the website as well about all of them, but it will give you an idea about all of the kind of characteristics in terms of where they're living, levels of deprivation, all of this kind of thing. Just to give you a really brief overview, although there's actually, I probably should have used maps instead. There's some really useful maps on the website, on the Evidence Hub, so do take a look at those, showing the distribution of all of the different segments across Wales, and also kind of drilling down into kind of specific areas, different locations. But looking at just kind of like quantities of each of these groups in the Wales population compared to the UK more generally, you can see that Wales has higher levels of some of these groups. So up our streets, one of that group of kind of lower engaged groups, also higher levels of dormitory dependables, higher levels of home and heritage, higher levels of commuter land culture buffs, but lower levels of some of those other groups. So metroculturals, a group that you don't come across very much in Wales. Experience seekers, we've got less of those around in Wales. And those are two of the kind of highly engaged in culture groups as well, bearing that in mind. So you can kind of begin to get a sense of how the kind of Welsh audiences differ a little bit to the UK-wide audiences on the whole. But there's plenty more analysis, like I said, on the website, kind of looking through the lens of audience spectrum. And if you pop onto our website, for each of those segments, you can find out all of this information. So you can find out the reattendance trends since COVID, impact of cost of living. You know, we fold all of our different data sources into this, so it's a kind of really comprehensive view and profile of each of these groups. So profiles such as kind of family makeup, whether they are singles, whether they have young children, whether they've got kids who are off in university, the kinds of careers they might have, a level of kind of professionality, kind of demographics, kind of hobbies, their attitudes towards culture. You know, I think some of the groups are really interesting in that their attendance levels and the kinds of things they go to see are actually really similar. But you know, some of the groups, I think I'm thinking of commuter line culture buffs and dormitory dependables here. Commuter line culture buffs very much consider themselves to be culture vultures. You know, they would express that they are interested in the arts and it's a strong part of their identity, and that's one of the main motivations for going to events, whereas a dormitory dependable might be coming along to the same stuff, but isn't necessarily seeing it as part of their identity in that way. You know, there might be other motivations. It might be a family outing. It might be all kinds of things. So those attitudes are actually really important as well in terms of, you know, how you want to present your kind of marketing, the kinds of offers, the kinds of membership schemes, all of this sort of stuff, in terms of reaching audiences. Also information on the kinds of events they're most likely to engage with, the kinds of locations they live in, the travel tendencies, whether they'll travel really far to come and see something good, or whether they're really only interested in what's on their doorstep. Which reminds me, there's also some really interesting analysis on working from home and how that's affected arts and cultural attendance, which you might want to fold into your funding applications, just to kind of illustrate that you're aware of those changes. In a nutshell, regional places seem to be doing a bit better than they were previously, whereas city centre arts venues less so, because they haven't got that those people kind of popping in after work to see a show necessarily in cities, if people are working from home. So that's a really interesting one. Yeah, and then digital activity, communications and marketing most likely to engage with. Essentially, there's kind of a pre-built audience development plan for each of those groups on our website, available to you for free. So do have a look. And, you know, make sure that in terms of your kind of planning and when you're talking about your strategic planning and your funding application, you're thinking of these kind of 3 elements, and you know, perhaps demonstrating that you plan to use audience spectrum for this, because it is such a useful tool, and it's an evidence to, you know, approach of doing this. So you can use it to deepen your relationships with existing audiences. So do that by identifying who's coming to your organization out of those groups, and learning more about those groups so you can figure out how to serve them better. Growing audiences, so identify those kind of low-hanging fruit audience types and understand how and where you can reach them. And also, like I was saying, widening engagement. So look at those segments who aren't currently relating to your work, and get to understand them, and it should hopefully give you some idea of those barriers at play, which might not be the kind of straightforward things which you would assume. You know, there are lots of things at play all the time. There we go. So quick list. I won't go through all of this because we are short on time and I want to give you some opportunity to chat through some questions. Oh, very quick opportunity to chat through questions. But yeah, these are all the places you can revisit these slides. I'll send them around afterwards, where you can access audience spectrum. So yeah, we also do audience spectrum analysis as part of our area profile report, so you can see what there are high levels, which groups exist in high levels in your local population. We can also run things like persona workshops. So this is a kind of new service that we're beginning to offer, which is a facilitated workshop, where we work with staff from right across your organisation to create detailed personas for your organisation's key audience types. That's really kind of less of a funding application thing, but a really useful kind of applying your data in practice. And we also have a service where we can, if you're using a ticketing system such as Metrics, Ticketsolve or Testatura, we can actually tag each of the customer records within your ticketing system. So actually you can begin to use audience spectrum in really direct marketing, and and you can, you know, isolate all of the computer line culture buffs in your database and send them a really specifically toned, specifically, you know, curated piece of marketing material that you know will speak to them and isn't a kind of one size fits all. There's a great case study on our website from the team at Theatre Brachyniog who are doing this at the moment. So that's worth having a look at. So what's next? I'll really whiz through this, sorry. So we're right at the end now. If you want to kind of action some things that will do you some favors in your funding application straight after this session, you can set up that free survey. As I say, if you've got a list of email addresses of people who've engaged with your work over the last year, then I highly implore you to just set up a free survey with you. We'll deliver it to you within 10 working days. You can get that sent out to that email list and you'll have a lovely data set to work with, and you can begin to talk about the motivations of your audiences and the demographic breakdowns and how you plan to widen engagement off the back of that data set if you don't have existing data on your audiences. Also sign up to the Audience Finder data tools for free. I'll provide the links for that in the follow-up as well. Get in touch if you want a kind of wider conversation. If you're still not sure where the answers you're looking for are, get in touch and we will point you towards them. It's our job to do that, so don't feel like you're bothering us. Or if you'd like to discuss an area profile report, or you like the sound of some of that bespoke reporting, please just get in touch and we'll you know, arrange calls to kind of talk through your requirements and what we can do that will kind of best you know, the best solution that we can find to the answers that you've got, really, and talk about that. And as I say, we'll provide a free quote for anything, so it's no bother at all. And we've also got a newsletter as well, so do keep in touch with us via that, and we'll let you know our latest findings. And finally, let your journey end when your application is complete, because I think you know, one of the things that your funder will be really keen to see is that you're demonstrating a kind of data-led approach generally in your organization going forwards, and you're looking to kind of work in that way, in a really evidence-based way, and also adapt to changes. We've seen so many changes in our audiences, so many external things that have impacted our work, you know, hugely significantly in the last few years. It's been a time like no other. So having a data-led approach is really crucial at the moment, I think, to make sure that your understanding of what you're doing and your place in the sector is relevant and is current, really. So, and you know, I think by signing up to the Audience Finder data tools, you're essentially kind of ticking a box for us to provide that service for you, to provide a free service that will monitor your audience data, and you can kind of demonstrate that you're doing that in your funding application.